Hello everyone and welcome to Safetica's free webinar where I will talk about why consulting and advisory firms desperately need to protect their clients' data. I'm Jan Mazal, I'm PMM at Safetica, and in following 30 minutes I will share with you some insight about why most of SMBs cannot prevent data leaking from the inside out, why the internal threats are equally or even more serious than external threats like ransomware. What are the losses faced by consulting and advisory firms that cannot prevent data leakage? And in the end, how to efficiently protect confidential or sensitive data against leakage, even when you lack resources and experience. And then we will follow with approximately 15 minutes for Q&A. So let's start. What is the current situation? For most companies today, data and people have become the main business drivers, especially when you provide any advisory, consultancy, or other professional services in general. But when you are digitizing your business, when you are using cloud services, or when you are offering your services online, which I would say is a must today in today's world, and when you are adapting the hybrid work, which is in fact a consequence of COVID-19 pandemics, it's really hard to protect the data from leakage. And when I say the data, I mean all the valuable information that your organization stores or possesses, including sensitive or confidential information from your clients and from your business partners. So why it's difficult to protect the data from leakage or breach today? Let me give you a few examples. According to the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report from 2021, almost half of the employees take work-related data with them when leaving their jobs. Either they think they have a right to do so, or they don't consider it as bad, or they don't know any better and maybe they just don't want to, or they want to take advantage of it. But what about the daily business? What happens, on a regular basis? So in the survey made by Tessian, 40% of employees admitted that they sent an email to the wrong person. Usually this is something that happens by mistake. Obviously, more than half of the incidents, like the data breach or data leakage incidents, are caused by negligent employees. Either they don't care or they don't know any better. So I'll show you the situations on one screen. So why am I doing it? Just because today most of the companies are afraid that somebody will attack them from the outside. This is usually something that you can hear or see in the media, the external attacks, ransomware. This is really topic that's quite common in the media. But even current research from Forrester shows that security decision makers in the companies are more concerned about the attacks from the outside. But in reality, at least what Forrester says, the data breaches are much more evenly spread in frequency, also among the internal incidents, lost or stolen data, or even problems with the third-party providers. Let me mention a couple of examples from April and May this year. So first, you can see that IKEA employee accessed the customer database. At the time of the news release, it was not clear what was his or her intention, but it happened, and the person accessed or exposed almost 100,000 customers' records. In the middle, you can see the message about the Apple. Former engineers are suspected currently from stealing the Apple chip trade secrets, something that could be really classified as a really top secret information or top secret know-how. And on the right, you can see news or media coverage of the current investigation that shows that the personal data, including, for example, insurance numbers of approximately 2,000 health service workers, were forwarded to one of the staff members' personal email account. I know that these are not companies from your vertical or from your segment, and you may object that why to bother when these big brands were not able to protect themselves against such incidents. The thing is that only the big names make it to the media outlets. Only the big names and big brands is something that medias are usually interested in. And at the same time, these big brands usually have big cash to survive almost whatever happens to them. And most of the smaller breaches have never been disclosed publicly. Some of them we know just because they've become our customers, but in general, I would say this is really just a top of the iceberg. So let's put down the individual examples and let's have some general overview. Let me again quote some of the researches and studies. During the last 2 years, the number of insider-caused cybersecurity incidents increased by almost a half. This is the information from the report from the Ponemon Institute. Also, another report says that almost almost 75% of companies confirm that insider attacks are becoming more and more frequent, and that this is number from the Wall Street Journal researcher survey that says that 2/3 of companies are afraid of malicious employees. I know that the Wall Street Journal survey was most probably across the big enterprises, so it doesn't have to apply to all companies in general. Probably there is some reason why the big corporates are more afraid of the malicious employees, but let's leave it as it is. Anyways, I owe you explanation of the term of the insider, and because I use it on quoting or mentioning these reports. So in fact, insider, it brings quite a bad connotation of the word, but in fact, it's any employee or any contractor with the access to sensitive or confidential information within the company. Especially in SMBs, it can be almost anyone. Usually, it's at least something from the middle up to the top management. So now, hopefully, you understand the breadth of the problem. What's worse, with these insider cost incidents, it's something that just happens, in fact, every day on a daily basis. By mistake or by intention, employees might send the sensitive data outside of the company, causing the loss of know-how or compliance violation, regulatory or any other business compliance violation. And then you are facing the regulatory fines or reputational damage, but just in case that your data or the sensitive data or confidential information appears somewhere publicly, or somebody starts to complain and other clients find out, right? But this often doesn't have to happen at all. So instead, being in the media or having everybody know about that, you just could see your competitors start to advance much faster than you would expect. You could see them introducing better offerings or starting campaigns that beat your value proposition. So in the reality, you start to lose your competitive advantage. And in the end, obviously, and in the long run, you are facing the customer churn. That's why, especially the C-level executives need to know the exposure level of their company. They need to know the risk level. And obviously, they need to get notified in case of any significant security incidents, and especially to security or compliance executives, it's very important to have the company's general compliance overview. At the same time, IT or security managers need to be able to prevent the dangerous file sharing, the file copying or uploads. They need to be able to audit incidents for, let's say, later investigation or for forensics purposes. And they need to be aware of any possible policy violations to be able to respond in time. Because when you are not able to detect any potential risks and prevent the data leakage, it can be very costly. Obviously, you can ask, so what are the costs of the data leaks and the insider threat incidents? Let's look at the data from the already mentioned report from Ponemon Institute. So according to that report, the average cost per data leaking inside out of the company, it's 646,000 US dollars. But if the incident is caused by a negligent employee or contractor, the cost is usually lower, approximately 480,000 US dollars. In the case of criminal or malicious insiders, those employees or contractors that intentionally want to harm you or intentionally want to steal or monetize the data, the costs are higher, almost 650,000 US dollars. And the costs are even much higher in case of data leak that is caused by criminal that misuse the employee's username or password, the credentials, to get to the sensitive information. But on the other hand, this is the least probable incident. As you can see, most of the data leaks are caused by negligent employees or contractors, and in total, creating the highest total loss. What's more important, this spend is growing year on year, also due to digitization. Now many companies having much more and more data stored in digital form, and also more and more processes are now digital and digitized. If you look at the total cost of activities required to resolve the insider threats over the 12 months, then the spend for SMBs up to 500 employees is over 8 million US dollars on average. By the way, from the verticals perspective, the financial services and professional services organizations are struggling the most. The average activity cost for financial services is almost 40% higher. No surprise, because this covers also the big banks and big banks and then insurance companies. But for services vertical that include companies like such as law, consulting, or accounting firms, the annual costs are more than 20% higher than the average cost. So at this point, I usually get a question, why does it cost so much? Of course, there are differences across the world, across the verticals and segments, but in general, most of the companies today cannot efficiently detect insider incidents. Usually, it takes months to discover the data breach. And when the companies find out that something happened, then it takes additional 2 to 3 months on average to contain the incidents. So to put it straight, it just takes too long to discover that something happened and the data leaked. When you notice any early signs that something is happening and start to deal with the incident, of course, you need to escalate. You need to start to respond and so on. So here on the right, you can see the overall structure of the activity costs. But to make it easier to understand the analyst language, let me compare it to typical firefighting. So let's imagine the data incident as a fire. When you notice that something happens, you need to escalate, to make people extinguish the fire. So it costs you quite a little. It's those, let's say, 5%. But then you start the most urgent firefighting, and that follows almost 20% of the spend. At the same time, you need to limit the fire outbreak to contain the incidents. In case of IT, you can imagine something like shutting down the affected systems, shutting down the computers that are affected, and that follows almost 30% of the cost. Of course, you investigate what happened and why, another 20% of the cost, and then you follow with the fixing and restoring everything. That follows additional 20 to 30% of the money. Do you remember the regulatory fines, the loss of competitive advantage, reputational damage, and customer churn that I mentioned previously? It's not there. And trust me, it would not be a small piece of a pie. Anyways, there are ways to prevent such incidents, and it's using data loss prevention tools. I know I promised you to not use any technical language, and also I know that the DLP, the abbreviation for such software, is a hated term for many IT people. But let's put the bad feelings aside for a moment and let me explain a little. So DLP is something like antivirus, but it protects you from the inside out. So antivirus and most of the security tools in general protects you against the external attackers, let's say the hackers coming from the outside. But DLP, the data loss prevention tools, protects the data from being sent or uploaded outside of the company. You can also hear vendors using different names like insider threat protection tool because it helps protect you against the human error and malicious acts. Either way, it's just the software. It's a program managed usually by your IT or by your IT service provider. And there's also a reason why many companies don't use it, and many, especially IT people, hate it. Let me explain. What's wrong with many DLP tools on the market? First, to be able to prevent sensitive data or confidential data from leaking outside of the company, you need to know where the data is. When you know it, then you need to mark or label those files as a confidential or as a sensitive. Not only files that you already have or had, but also those that are being or will be created in the future. And this is usually a very difficult activity because the files can be literally everywhere. Second, when you have the sensitive or confidential data marked or labeled as sensitive, let's say classified, you need to set the rules, meaning define who can work with this information and how. When companies try to set what is strictly allowed and what is not, they usually end up with never-ending projects that take months, quarters, and even years, and in the end are very costly. And what's even worse, in the case of hard restrictions, they often start limiting employees' productivity. So you can imagine like permanent conflicts between not properly set rules and the tasks that certain employees need to do in their daily work. And third, almost any company I know lacks the IT specialist. And in case of cybersecurity specialist, the situation is even worse. And that is again worsening the second point, the implementation, because when you then have the trained, qualified, expert people, it's getting much more difficult to implement such tool, to start using it. In the case of SMBs, small and medium businesses, the situation is even harder because usually you don't have spare capacities, in your IT. You have one, two, maybe if you were lucky, three people taking care of everything, making your computers and internet running, up to replacing cartridges in your printers. And then you are even requesting them, at least hopefully, to secure your IT environment and business. So that's really, really challenging. Luckily, the world has changed and advanced. You can admit that it's not for good always, but life taught me to always look at the bright side of it. So first, I would say that we got used to use the cloud and consuming IT in general, and in fact, any technologies as a service. Using email from Microsoft or Google, having customer data stored in Salesforce or HubSpot CRM, and even in our private lives, watching Netflix or listening to Spotify, we don't bother with how it works or where it runs. We just use it and pay as we go for its availability, right? Second, thanks to the advancement in technologies, today it's much easier to automate many tasks and to learn machines, meaning computers or the software, to do the routine tasks instead of humans, which helps us offload many activities. And third, we already had a chance to collect some best practices, in fact, to learn what went wrong in the past and what could have been done better way. And thanks to that, we were able to introduce a new solution. We call it Safetica Next. It's a next-gen SaaS DLP, and I promised you to not use any tech language, so I won't say this these keywords again. But basically, it's a tool that keeps your sensitive data out of the wrong hands by detecting the security risks and by preventing the incidents literally from day one. It's focused on just the core, the most important data security scenarios. So it doesn't cover everything, but only the things that we consider as the most important. At the same time, it's focused on maximum simplicity and automation based on our best practices, based on what we have learned during the last 10 years in protecting the data from leakage. Basically, Safetica Next searches for any regulated data like personal, financial, or health, and for business sensitive information like contracts, business plans, blueprints, or even for source code. By the way, do you know where do you store this kind of documents and data across your company? Because what I want to show you are the results of this year's Insider Threat Report from Ponemon Institute that shows that from all the possible channels, meaning all the possible ways where your data can flow in the and outside of the company, most of the users tend to store the sensitive data or confidential information in their emails, in the network drives, in the cloud applications, or endpoint, meaning computer hard drives. Of course, the data is available also in databases. That is usually the official place where to store it. Or it can be saved to removable media like the USB sticks, which is usually unwanted unless it's a company-owned encrypted USB flash drive. And there's another perspective, I would say, from the IT managers, CIOs or CISOs. Analysts ask them which channels, again, the ways where the data can flow, are they most worried about because they see the high risk of the insider-driven data loss. And basically, as you can see, the cloud, network, and email, and web applications were mentioned the most together with the removable media. And this is also one of the examples of the best practices I was talking about. So with Safetica Next, IT managers and C-level executives get the necessary visibility across all the important channels, including email, including file shares, cloud, removable storages. We are also covering the social media and instant messengers, but it's not that important to mention right now. Now, let me very briefly explain why we consider Safetica Next better than what has been available on the market so far. And it's in fact based on these three key value pillars. First, for us, what is really important is short time to value and high flexibility. You can have your own environment ready and start using, in fact, in a matter of minutes. Then it requires approximately one mandate to install in fact the solution on as antivirus on the employees' computers. But basically, you can start protecting your data in days, depending on how many computers you need to protect and how many users or employees you need to protect. And you can pay as you go if you need. We are also heavily focused on ease of use. Your environment comes basically pre-configured, and it also contains out-of-box templates to be able to easily categorize the sensitive data. And the tool also learns automatically what can be considered as your safe workspace that does not require hard users restrictions. In fact, the whole product minimizes the amount of settings required, so it makes it very easy to implement and start using. So this is the efficiency pillar. From the perspective of protection or data security, we are focusing a lot on the risk evaluation. The detection of risky users and the risky operations or events is fully automatic. Based on the data analytics, the risk evaluation helps to detect the potential incidents let's say, to uncover unusual or suspicious users activity. We are also trying to cover the full perimeter. What we mean by that, we are covering the key channels and providing the visibility into the key channels. This is something that I mentioned on the previous slide. But we are also supporting Windows and Mac OS, the most common platforms. And we are also able to protect the computers that are temporarily offline. That means that for any reason disconnected from the internet. So that would be the security pillar. And the third is around the architecture. Today, I mentioned this is really important to be able to protect the hybrid digital workspace. Basically what we mean by that, the Safetica Next is ready for users working from home or remotely. And that's it, because most of the companies deployed this hybrid work model, and I think we can be almost sure that it's here to stay for quite a long time, maybe forever. And when I was mentioning the architecture, and I was also mentioning the Safetica Next was built based on our best practices that we collected during the last years. Using these best practices from the enterprise data loss prevention solution, we built the Next literally from scratch, but to run natively in the cloud. So it means that you don't need to have any infrastructure, you don't need to have any own IT capacities to deploy it. It has also very low impact on the computer's performance, let's say below 3%. So it does not limit the users in their daily work. And it is also ready for managed service providers. So if you have the external provider that takes care of your IT, Safety Connect can be fully managed as the service for the clients, for the customers. So these are the three value pillars. At the beginning, I told you about the legacy data loss prevention tools that require to have sufficient IT capacities, that require deep expertise and dedicated security specialists. Those DLP tools usually lead to very lengthy and costly implementation projects and usually put barriers on users' daily tasks and jobs. So basically, this is something that we are fighting against in Safetica. The question is, how are we doing so far? Let me show some results from software reviews. The software reviews analysts collect the inputs directly from the end customers, the end users, and create the evaluation of various software vendors. And based on the evaluation, we see that the vast majority of Safetica customers surveyed consider our products as reliable, as enabling their productivity and enhancing their performance. From the customer experience perspective, Safetica performed better than its competitors in saving our clients time, in transparency during negotiations and communications with us as a vendor or with our partners, and in continually improving our product offering. And last but not least, over 90% of interviewed customers think that Safetica is critical to their professional success. Based on the recognition and based on feedback gathered from our customers, Safetica was ranked first in ease of implementation and overall as a leader in software reviews DLP data quadrant. And I think this fulfills or it underlines our vision and purpose to make the data protection easy and to enable, in fact, all companies, no matter if they are large or small, to focus on their business and not need to worry about the business and about the data loss. So what are the options? Obviously, no good solution is offered for free, but should offer or provide the convenient options. Safetica Next is available, or it offers two subscription options. It's either as a monthly subscription or annual subscription. The monthly subscription can be increased, in fact, anytime, or both. The subscriptions can be increased anytime. In case of monthly subscription, that could be decreased or terminate it obviously at the end of the month. In case of annual subscription, that can be decreased only on its anniversary date. The monthly subscription is billed pro rata and paid for the previous month. The annual subscription is invoiced and paid always before the start of the next billing period. Also, for those who sign up for this webinar, we promise the promo. And I think it's about the time to share the information with you. So we promised you a special time limited offer, and that is offering a free data security audit that helps you to discover weak points in your company's data security. It is available to all participants from US and Canadian companies above 100 employees. And you can request the security audit visiting the link or scanning the QR code. I will also try to share it with you this way. Either way, I will try to drop the link to the chat later. If you feel that this tool is something that your IT could be interested in, we also offer a free trial subscription. This free trial is fully accessible via web browser, and it has the demo data built in, including the product guide that helps the admin or the managers to understand how the tool works. So you don't need to install anything. It's just signing up, and you can try, or your admins, your IT managers can try how it works and what information it provides. So now I hope that you understand that insiders represent the real risk to your businesses, that there's a reason why companies fail in protecting themselves against the data leakage, and that there is a solution. The tool that keeps your sensitive data from falling into the wrong hands, tool that detects security risks and prevents the incidents from day one, the tool or software that is focused on maximum simplicity and automation based on our best practices, and is provided as a service with monthly or annual subscriptions. So before I check the chat and the comments, I'd like to tell you that if you like to have this presentation slides in PDF, just send me a message or email me via LinkedIn messages, and I will happy to share it. Still, if you can wait a second, I will try drop the link to the chat so you have the access. So hopefully you were able to see the information in the chat. Currently, I don't see any questions or comments in our chat. If you have anything you'd like to ask us, feel free, just drop it to the chat and I will try to respond. If not, obviously, feel free to reach us using LinkedIn or my contacts. We'll be more than happy to answer all your questions. And obviously there's quite delay with the stream, so I'll wait a little if something shows up. Anyways, it seems that there are no other questions. So, I see first. So let me share it with you. So the question is if it is possible to integrate the HR payroll. In fact, Safetica Next currently, as we try to use it as simple solution as possible for anyone to use it, we are not offering many options to integrate it with the other systems. On the other hand, we as a Safetica have another solution, the on-prem enterprise-grade DLP, that offers quite wider set of features as its enterprise solution, and also can be integrated with additional tools, also with other security tools. So this is something that, if you are interested, can discuss more broadly offline. So let's wait for a while if any other question shows up. And if not, let me thank you a lot for all those who attended. Hope you consider and see it valuable, and it provided you some insights and valuable information. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach me anytime. So enjoy the rest of the day, and maybe see you next time.